All right, you're listening to a very special Saturday evening edition of Tougie's Take, episode 52. I'm DJ Jazzy G. DJ Jazzy D. Sorry, I messed that up. Joined as always by Tougie. Tougie, how are you doing?
Oh, I am just fantastic. Although, so who's our Uncle Phil that's going to throw you out the front door?
Uncle Phil died.
I know, but that's why I'm saying we need
the reunion show. We had to recast him.
We need a new Uncle Phil. Like if you're going to be DJ Jazzy Deej, who's going to throw you out the front door?
I would imagine it'd be Architect.
It should
based
be
on
too.
Availability.
Based on job description. I think it should be him. So there we go. Okay, so that was solved. So we'll have to have Architect back on the show at some point, although I still don't know if there's anything positive to talk about in Buffalo, so we'll keep waiting for that Jack Eichel trade.
Yeah, we will. So I'm sure you've seen it. It's all over the streets. They're alive with panic, especially the streets of Arizona. They're afraid of losing their dog. Lost dog. Coyotes gone. They may be hitting the road, according to all of the tweets I've seen, where people just panicking that the franchise is over. So because of that, I decided to theme today's Warmies over sports relocations in the Big Four.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And I've also divided it into two chapters. Chapter 1 is entitled The Exciting Life of Bees. So Tougie, in 2002...
Well, we have an episode title. It took a little bit longer than Tougie's took, but I think we have an episode title.
Yeah, right? The Exciting Life of Bees. So Tougie, let's talk about the Charlotte Hornets. In 2002, what happened to the Charlotte Hornets?
Was it 2002 that they rebranded?
Or they relocated in 2002, but where to?
That wasn't when they went to New Orleans, was it?
No, it was.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So 2002, the Charlotte Hornets become the New Orleans Hornets.
Yeah. And then they ended up playing in like Oklahoma City or whatever after Katrina.
Yeah.
Then,
so in 2005, that was the next question. What happened to the New Orleans Hornets?
They had to play in OKC after Hurricane Katrina.
Right. So then in 2000, they renamed themselves. They were the Oklahoma City Hornets.
Yeah.
In 2007, what happened to the Oklahoma City Hornets?
They moved back to New Orleans.
And rebranded as the Pelicans.
Was it 2007 that they became they went back, but I don't think they became the Pelicans immediately.
You know, I don't know if they did or not. I don't think
they did. It wasn't immediate. That was maybe it was. I could have sworn that was like 2012, 2013-ish though that they became the Pelicans. But you're not wrong. It's just not.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. It was 4 years. It was 4 years later.
Okay. So it's funny though because I feel like I'm going to completely disrupt your trivia by saying that once they left Oklahoma City, all of a sudden, what happens? They're like, oh shit, basketball works in Oklahoma City. Seattle's having contentious issues. That Seattle moves to Oklahoma City. And then when the New Orleans Hornets become the Pelicans, the Charlotte Bobcats, who were reborn, once the Hornets moved to New Orleans, the Bobcats took the Hornets name back around the same time that the Pelicans rebranded.
Exactly. So, yeah, that was all my questions. So do you have any idea how soon it was that the OKC Thunder or the Seattle Supersonics became the OKC Thunder after the Oklahoma City Hornets left?
The second the Hornets left.
Yeah, it was the very next season.
Yeah. Like as soon as they could.
Well, so that concludes the exciting life of bees.
I knew everything too. It's crazy.
So yeah, I'll do these. I don't know if I want to do these in order of difficulty, but yeah, that's what I'll do. So can you name the most recent MLB relocation? This excludes the Toronto Blue Jays.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, is this a trick question? The most recent MLB relocation. Now, we're not just talking about like how the Angels went from being called the LA Angels to the Anaheim.
that is technically a rebranding, not a relocation.
So it has to be Washington.
That is correct.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm like, I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. It's got to be Washington.
Yeah, the Montreal Expos became the Washington Nationals.
Mm.
Do you have any idea what the relocation right before that was?
I do, because Montreal's stadium was a dumpster fire, and they played, if I'm not mistaken, in Puerto Rico.
Well, so yeah, I didn't really include that because that was like technically a one thing.
Okay. The one before that?
Yeah.
God, so we're talking pre-2005. Oof. Or 2004. Most recent relocation.
It would have been 1978. That's why I'll give you a specific year.
Jesus.
This is probably the hardest question of all the ones left on the Warmies.
Okay.
I will tell you where they moved to.
Okay.
They moved to Arlington, Texas, and became the Texas Rangers.
God, I know this too. Because okay, I got it. Yeah. And they're intertwined. They're connected.
Yeah, see? Yeah,
because they played in Washington before.
Yes.
I don't... God, what was their name before?
They were the Senators.
Okay, yeah, it was something fucking... some presidential bullshit.
Yeah, that was the only reason I asked, because they were intertwined.
That was a Jeopardy-like breadcrumb trail that you just had to pay attention, and the answer's right in front of you. Mm-hmm. So well done. Deej for the new host of Jeopardy, because Aaron Rodgers is busy and the other guy essentially got canceled and fired.
All right, so for the remaining sports leagues, the NFL and the NHL, I have the same question. So, in order, can you name the last 4 NFL relocations?
Houston to Tennessee has to be one.
It is one of them.
God, the last 4 relocations. Okay. We have Houston to Tennessee. We have the Rams to St. Louis, St. Louis to LA. Does that count as 2 or just 1? Because the Rams technically moved twice.
So the Rams moving to St. Louis is not one of the last 4.
Really? Okay. So again, it is technically
the 6th most recent relocation.
Okay, wow. Jesus. So Houston to Tennessee, the St. Louis Rams to LA, but I guess that didn't count. The San Diego Chargers to LA.
Well, St. Louis to LA counts, but LA to St. Louis
doesn't. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
So Houston to Tennessee to become the Titans. St. Louis Rams to LA. San Diego Chargers to LA. Oakland Raiders to Vegas. Am I missing one? Or is
those
that
are the 4 most recent. Can you name the 5th most recent, though, now that you know the Rams to St. Louis is the 6th most recent?
Fuck.
It's the fun one.
Is it Cleveland to Baltimore?
It is Cleveland to Baltimore. Correct.
God, we're on fire today. Yes. I was due. Much like the Generals, I was due for a good performance here. Yes.
All right. So then, here you go. Here's your layup just to get us rolling. The final question. The final, or the most recent 4 NHL relocations in order.
All right. In order. Ooh, in order. Okay. Well, that's a little bit tough. That's a tricky one. Most recent relocations in order. Okay. You have the Winnipeg Jets to Arizona. I don't know if that's
the first
one of them.
One. It's not the first one.
Okay, that's fine. Let me get the 4 at least. I'll see if I can get the right order. Winnipeg to Arizona, Quebec City to Colorado.
Yes.
In terms of most recent 4, would North Stars to Dallas be in that 4, or is that too old?
No, that is too old. Although it is only 2 years before the oldest of these 4.
Jesus. So Hartford to Carolina then.
Yeah.
And Man, the fourth one's really stumping me.
You're going to want me to edit this out.
I am if it's very, very obvious. Hold on. I'm trying to think of all the teams at once here, and it's Atlanta to Winnipeg.
Yeah, there you
go. Okay. So in terms of order, so again, it was Arizona, Colorado, Winnipeg, and Carolina. So in terms of order,
and all three were in sequential years.
Right. So you said Winnipeg to Arizona wasn't first.
Correct.
Which means it's either Colorado or Carolina. And they're all very bunched together. Is that the order? Colorado then Carolina? Or is it Carolina then Colorado?
It is. Neither of those are the correct order.
Fucking really?
Yeah.
So which one of the older three has to be first? Because obviously Atlanta to Winnipeg is the most recent.
Yeah. So Quebec to Colorado is first.
Yeah, that's what I was. Oh, so is it Quebec and then Arizona, Carolina?
Yes. Yeah, okay, there you go.
Winnipeg. Okay. We got it. See, the problem is, though, like, wasn't it that Colorado, Arizona, and Carolina all became teams within like a year and a half of one another?
Yeah, I believe. It was really close. Because I know the years they happened in, but not the seasons. Like, so the Nordiques became the Avalanche in 95. The Jets became the Coyotes in 96. And then the Whalers became the Hurricanes in 97. And then actually in 93, the North Stars became the Stars. So even then, that was bunched together as well.
God, the 90s were wild.
Yeah.
You also ended up getting like, hey, here's Nashville and Minnesota as a team by the beginning of 2000. Like,
yeah, and then here's Atlanta in 99.
Yeah, I don't think that's talked about enough. Just kind of the, like, whenever you talk, or at least whenever I hear about like, oh, the NHL and its expansion, like you always hear about, late 60s and then what happened in the early 70s. You never really, I guess because it's too recent still, even though it's been 30 years in some cases, just about, but you never really hear about just how ridiculous the 90s were in terms of expansion for the NHL.
Yeah. And, as ridiculous as you think the 90s were for the NHL, they were even more ridiculous for the Canadian Football League. So this isn't any trivia questions, but I just need to tell you, like, in my research for today's Warmies, what I came across.
I don't know if I could get this right. All I know about the CFL is they had two teams named the Red Blacks, I think.
Apparently, the Canadian Football League, at one point, had an expansion franchise in 1992 in California known as the Sacramento Gold Miners that were part of the Canadian Football League. And then in 95, they moved to San Antonio to become the San Antonio Texans. They also expanded into Las Vegas and had the Las Vegas Posse. But there was the CFL in 1996 attempted to move the Las Vegas Posse to Miami, Florida, to become the Miami Manatees and the southernmost Canadian Football League team.
So I knew that there were American teams in the CFL back in the day. I didn't know it was that crazy.
Oh, it's pretty ridiculous. And also, if you're listening to this right now, and you have the ability to do so, I highly suggest you look up the Miami Manatees logo. Even though they never played, they had concepts, logos, everything, and it was just of like a very photorealistic manatee, but it's like there's just a football tucked under its flipper. It's like I sent it to you on Twitter if you need the reference, Tougie, but it's just one of the most ridiculous things you'll ever see.
Let me timestamp this part of the podcast. It's at about 14 minutes.
So you can pop it into the video?
Yeah, we'll pop it in there for everybody. This is incredible.
That's one of the best sports logos I've ever seen. Like, even the font is just absurd. Like, there's no reason.
It's the Miami Vice font, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the Miami Vice font with a photorealistic manatee just tucking just breadbasketing a football. Like, it's just, I don't know. Absolutely insane. So, yeah, that was the CFL. And these fun facts, much like the rest of this podcast.
Here's the thing, though. I have a trivia question of my own for you.
Trivia for me? I don't know anything.
Off the cuff, because I saw
not a lot
something.
Of people knew this, but Trebek didn't know anything.
He just read the answers.
Yeah, he could just read good.
So there was something that popped. He was really good at enunciating. I saw something on Reddit that I found was very interesting, and I figured I'd ask you. Do you know who holds the all-time record in the NHL for most shootout goals?
In the NHL?
Yeah.
There was a while where it was UC Jokinen.
It is no longer UC Jokinen.
It is no longer UC Jokinen. I don't think it's Sasha Barkov.
Nope.
Most shootout goals.
Yes. It's an active player.
It is an active player. I want to say Patrick Kane, but I feel like it's somebody like Brendan Saad.
It is not Brandon Saad. Patrick Kane is third with 47.
He's third with 47. So who has scored more? So you need a skill player with good hands that's been playing for a while. So they're likely in their early 30s at this point.
So Patrick Kane, again, the shootout started in 05-06. Patrick Kane is in third with 47. In second place is Franz Nielsen with 49.
Oh, yeah.
And in first, he has 50. Mule school. Do you have a guess with who has 50? Three more than
Kane.
Who
has 50? Franz Nielsen's in second. Who has
UC Jokinen, for the record, 50. Is in 13th with 37.
Yeah, he really just quit on us. I feel like if you're asking me, it should be a player that I have a connection with, or is this just random trivia?
I mean, it is somewhat more random trivia.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to go with.
Okay, so see, this is what I wanted. Because everyone's like, man, Tougie doesn't know anything. But look, I can stump Deej too, so now it's going to be neither of these guys know anything. Instead of just, hey, this is a really random question. He also plays for Chicago.
See, okay. I feel like it's not Taves.
It is, with 50.
Is it Taves?
Jonathan Taves has the most shootout goals in the NHL. It is very bizarre. And as the comments to that thread put up, almost 80% of the goals went 5-hole too. So goalies, you go up against Jonathan Taves, protect the 5-hole. But yeah, the top five is Taves, Nielsen, Kane.
Oshie's number one if you count the Olympics.
Oshie's fourth in NHL history, and then Radim Vrbata is fifth.
Radim Vrbata?
And then, fun fact, in terms of percentage, you have three players tied for second with a 2/3 success rate, 66.7 rounded up. Columbus's Yaroslav Balostic, who scored 6 times on 9 shots. Christian Dvorak of the Arizona Coyotes has scored 6 times on 9 shots. And Ville Koivunen, formerly of the Florida Panthers, scored 4 times on 6 shots. But the ultimate shootout man for the Minnesota Wild, defenseman Petri Numelin, who scored 8 times on 10 shots.
That's pretty weird.
It's bizarre as hell.
Yeah. It's also weird to me that Michael Hanzus was really good at shootouts, apparently. He had near 50%.
So in terms of percentage, the top 5 in terms of active players are Dvorak, Gensel, Panarin, Gusev, and Brock McGinn.
Holy shit, Brock McGinn.
Who would expect those names to be there? I don't know.
I mean, Panarin, I get it. I get that's not weird. I understand, but man. Go figure. And you'll learn something every day.
Oh, and you're about to learn more, Deej, because we're just going segment after segment before we hit this intro. Do you know why? Because in the last episode, we came up with a new segment. It's not going to be an everyday thing, an every show thing.
It's not going to be a routine.
But I did ask our lovely viewers what the name of this segment should be, and there was one winner. Deej, welcome to round 2 of Pasta or Impasta.
Oh, unreal.
And
I saw the suggestion.
I am going to start this off with Liguria.
Liguria?
Liguria. Pasta or Impasta?
Impasta.
Correct. Liguria is the capital of Genoa. It's a place. It's a region.
It also, you don't have, pasta would never end. It would never end in an A declension.
There you go.
There you go. Linguistics win.
So let's go with tagliatelle.
Tagliatelle. That the way that is structured linguistically tells me it's a pasta.
It is a pasta. 2 for 2 is Mr. Deej today. Let's go with calamarata.
Calamarata. Yes.
It is a pasta. He's 3 for 3. Can he hit the vaunted 5 for 5? Passatelli.
All right, so that one's tricky. I don't think that telly is a pasta suffix, so I'm going to say not a pasta.
Oh, you're wrong. I wish I could say you're right. It is indeed a pasta. He's down to 3 for 4, 75%, looking to raise that up to an 80 with our final pasta, or is it Strozzapreti?
Strozzapreti? The famous electric scooter racer, Strozzapreti?
Strozzapreti.
That one's complicated because ETTI can be a pasta, but it doesn't necessarily indicate a pasta, but I am going to go with yes.
It is indeed a pasta. Fun fact, it translates to priest choker or priest strangler. Strozzapreti.
Yeah, that's because that guy, he killed those priests before he was the scooter champ.
Deej, you went 4 for 5 in pasta or impasta. My new favorite segment to bring up. We're going to need to get a logo done. Maybe we will. I will actually contact the
give me some noodles wearing a bandit mask.
Deej, that's a great intro to this show. But the question that everyone has on their mind is, if this show were to be sponsored by somebody, who would it be?
Pasta or impasta?
Not just the show in general that features such great things as the Warmies. Pasta or impasta?
Pasta or impasta? Sponsored by Italy. Italy. We're still a country. It's like Italy, more than just Rome.
Who would possibly sponsor this show?
I would say that would be Manscaped.
It would be. Deej, tell them all about it.
Manscaped, the premier manufacturer of male grooming products. Manscaped, in conglomeration with the Tougies Take podcast, has come together to come up with a perfect, beautiful 6-letter word. That word is Tougie, Tougie, that you can use for 20% off your order, free international shipping on any of their products. Get them delivered anywhere. Get them on camelback, muleback, have a team of sled dogs, bring it to your research station. Manscaped, your balls will thank you.
And so will we. See you on the other side of the intro, everybody.
This is the intro now.
Wow, we're back from the intro. Thanks, Craft Services, for putting together that coconut shrimp platter.
Okay.
Tougies Steak backstage. No green M&Ms. So yeah, let's get down to it. Let's answer some viewer questions, and we're just gonna.
Let's do it. We'll just steamroll our way through these.
Yeah,
why
we'll
not?
slow roll the segment that I've entitled Exodus. But
we actually do have some general topics to discuss today, so it won't have to be the longest viewer question segment in the world.
Good. They're getting weird.
They are. Oh, and it gets weirder. This one comes from Ender. This is for both of us. When was the last time you both flown a kite? Seems like nobody does that anymore. Deej, when was the last time you flew a kite?
I was like 5 years old and went to a palm tree. And I don't know if you know this about palm trees, but A, impossible to climb. 2, filled with sharp objects that just magnetize kites. But so this is what's interesting, and not a lot of people know this, but the kite actually fell out of favor when books were invented. Like, oh, there's books. There's something to do now. And you're like, don't you rot your mind with those books. You should go outside and fly a kite every now and then. Your brain will get saturated.
Books. You're not likely to get electrocuted. God damn it, Ben Franklin. It's been a while, but hey, credit to people that grew up and still enjoy the kite hobby. I endorse your pastime.
No thoughts,
just next question.
Just the wind. You and the kite. Tree.
Flying kites as an ASMR has to be a thing, and it always ends in the same way.
Yeah, it's always like,
wow,
it got
stuck in a tree.
This is awesome. I'm so fuck. That's
This next question comes from Braden. Rank the big 4 sports leagues by how much you enjoy watching them. So the NFL, NHL, NBA, and MLB. Deej, your order for the big 4.
Number 1, NFL. Number 2, NHL. Number 3, NBA. Number 4, MLB.
I think I'd still... it really is close between the NHL and the NFL.
So let me give you my reason for why I put the NFL over the NHL. So hockey is still my favorite sport, but when I watch those 17 Miami Dolphins games a year, it's an event, right? Like, I'm like, oh, I can't wait till Sunday. There's the game. Like, I've been researching this one game, and then for those 3 hours, I get so much enjoyment out of it, as opposed to the saturation of the NHL, where I watch all 82 games, but it loses the connotation of being an event because of how many of them there are.
Also, how does it factor in for you the ability to watch a game from a team you don't root for? Do you find it easier to watch a Packers-Bears game, or would it be more enjoyable to watch Dallas and San Jose?
I do find it to be more enjoyable to watch a Packers-Bears game than it would be Dallas-San Jose, just because of every play is significantly more important to my fantasy football team than it would be to my fantasy hockey team, where it's just like, okay, I need Tyler Seguin to get 2 assists here without like getting a minus on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, as opposed to like, if Aaron Rodgers messes up this pass, he's getting dropped. Like, that's, I don't know.
Honestly, I think I agree. Like, obviously, like I'd take playoff. It's so tough because I agree. Hockey's my favorite sport. No question. But there is something about the NFL in that, yes, you don't have as many games to follow. The playoffs aren't series based. Like, it's a really close 1A, 1B. I'd still probably put hockey above football because I feel like bad hockey can be more enjoyable to watch than bad football.
Yeah.
For that reason. So I'd go hockey 1A, NFL 1B, and then I'd put... I feel like baseball and basketball are really close too.
So there it was just that baseball and basketball are close for me. Like, I enjoy both of them. I don't necessarily dislike either sport. It just came down to quantity for me. Like, basketball season's significantly shorter.
I like to think of the playoffs, though, and it's like, would I rather watch a playoff baseball game or a playoff basketball game? They take about the same amount of time, and for the NBA, that's just the fourth quarter alone.
Yeah.
But I guess both sports are the same. You could say for playoff baseball, watch the last 3 innings. And for basketball, it's watch the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So I think it just, for that it depends on the circumstances of the game. So, like, clearly the NFL and the NHL are well above. So it's tough to rank it. I guess I'd probably at this rate take a baseball game over a basketball game, but it's pretty close.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, the NFL and the NHL definitely 1 and 2 because they wear pads and nights are cool.
All the reasons I need. This question comes from a shitload of people. And it is because, again, we are recording on a Saturday, and last night, on a Friday night, in Chicago, for AEW Rampage, CM Punk returned to the professional wrestling world for the first time in 7 years to maybe the loudest ovation I have ever heard. Like, we are talking, think about, like, walk-off home run, Game 7 of the World Series, Stanley Cup final at, like, Alex Martinez, like, level goal. This might have been the loudest goddamn ovation I've ever heard. And to anybody who doesn't give a shit about wrestling, you hear CM Punk and it's like, isn't that the guy that got smashed in the UFC? Yes, it is. But, like, it's so tough to explain for anybody who isn't a wrestling fan, just like the circumstances that led up to this. But I do think it is that type of moment that you could show somebody who doesn't get wrestling. And it's like just the concept of here is a guy walking out onto a stage and people are screaming for him louder than the Pope in Rome. Like, it's just, it was unbelievable. Is the only way to put it. And I mean, in terms of like wrestling ovations, like, I feel like even casual people might understand like how popular Stone Cold was or The Rock. I mean, especially like Stone Cold in Texas has gotten some like eardrum bursting receptions, especially at like stadiums in Texas. But yeah, there was something about this where for wrestling fans, you've been waiting for this for 7 years, and I think it kind of lived up to the hype. They talked about this, basically beat you over the head with, this is what you're going to get, but we're not going to tell you 100% that's what you're going to get, which I thought was a fantastic way to play it. It was just a really fucking cool moment.
Yeah.
And it, like I said, it's tough to explain to people who don't give a shit about wrestling. But I will say, if you were ever on the fringe about wrestling, or if you're a bit of a lapsed fan, I think last night's episode of AEW Rampage is something to watch, because in terms of wrestling, like the landscape of it, it's probably never been better. And AEW as a promotion is just something else. Like it's fantastic.
Was his first match back against Mickey Gall?
It wasn't, but I'd hate to see that rematch.
I also like the idea of a really over the top anti-drug theme storyline where they just like throw all the money in the world at Mike Jackson to get him to join the AEW. It'd be great.
Hey, CM Punk never lost to Mike Jackson. It was a no contest.
Exactly. That's why it's funny. It's also even funnier that he tested positive for marijuana with CM Punk's like extreme anti-drug stances that he's had his whole life.
And he still kicked the ever-loving shit out of it.
So they need to play up that angle.
Which again is why some people be like, well, why do you watch it? Not everyone in there is actually a fighter. It's like, it's a fucking performance art, you fucking dope. But we don't have to get into the conversation of why some people still don't understand what wrestling's supposed to be.
I mean, it was pretty interesting. Like, I looked up some stuff. Like, I'm not a wrestling fan, so I had to Google some stuff. But I didn't realize that CM stood for Philip Jack.
It's long been debated what the CM stands for.
I believe, isn't it like Chick Magnet? It's something dumb.
It's been rumored that it's that. It's been rumored that it's Cookie Monster. It's been rumored that it's Chicago made because he's from Chicago. And nobody knows because it's fucking stupid and hilarious.
Yeah. That is stupid. Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing, right? Like, for this particular show, like, hey, how much wrestling crossover is there? A decent amount. The problem is, in terms of hosts, wrestling crossover, there's none. It's just never been Deej's thing.
They just all look the same. I need them to wear masks so I can differentiate. Like Rey Mysterio, could pick him out of a lineup.
We're gonna get
everybody else.
But what if I introduce you to Mexican Lucha Libre and everyone wears a mask, just about?
All right, well then I think it's really easily like you could pick out who's who, because of the cape.
The worst part
obviously
is,
that guy's Rey Mysterio because he doesn't have a cape on.
The worst part is you are exactly the type of person that should fucking love wrestling and just how fucking stupid it is. Because it is. It's the stupidest thing on the fucking world. But that's what makes it awesome. Well, no, Joe Rogan's the stupidest thing on the world. But yeah, just it's so fucking awesome. And I don't like, I'm mad. I'm mad because you should like it. You, through the power of transitive property, who should be the number one Dungeons and Dragons player in the world, should like wrestling. There should be crossover there. But I think it's too late. I think that ship has sailed. And it sucks.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just too old. Just too old. I prefer... I don't know. I whatever it is, and there's like, it's like a lot of my real life friends are big pro wrestling fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like the dudes I watch sports with every weekend. They like love pro wrestling. They go to amateur or like not even amateur, but like pro-am, like local wrestling promotions. Like that's right up their alley. Like I've been to some of those.
We were talking about going to WrestleMania together in Tampa before COVID.
Yeah,
you're like,
is different.
You're
you
like,
know how
I
your
don't
mom
give a
watches
shit.
the Super Bowl. Like,
yeah.
That's how I am with WrestleMania. That's like my mom, like, she doesn't follow football at all. But like when the Super Bowl's on,
the Soupy Boopy?
Yeah, that's how I am with WrestleMania.
There.
I'll just be like, I'll make nachos. Is Tom Brady fighting in this one?
It's the best. It's the best thing in the world, though, to just like, because I went to an indie show with 3 friends of mine who do like, or with 3 friends of mine. 2 of them do like wrestling. They're 2 of the friends that I'm going down to Boston with this fall to catch an AEW show. And then 1 who did not give a shit. He just wanted to go to hang out. And God, he almost got murdered by a wrestler diving over the top rope. Like, I still have the footage from that show. And literally, like, his heel, I'm shocked he didn't, like, twist his ankle or something. Like, he was that close to just getting obliterated. It's the funniest thing in the world. So support pro wrestling, everybody. If you're not into it, ask yourself why. And then, don't worry, ask me why you're not into it. Say, Tougie, this is why I think I'm not into it. And I will tell you why you're wrong on Twitter, on Discord, in the YouTube comment section. Which, of course, make sure to subscribe.
Look in the mirror and ask yourself, why am I not into wrestling?
You should be. It's fucking awesome. Deej, this next question comes from Frank. And it has to do with our offside debate from the last show. Do I only want offsides to go away to stop Endo from delaying the game with deke moves in NHL? And yes, I do. Because all Endo Mills does, the unofficial third man of this podcast, we might actually have to get him on this podcast full time, Deej, because, I mean, if we need to continue to copy the Steve Dangle podcast, formula here.
He's like our Gelman. I don't know if that, like, I feel like, is that reference lost on you?
It is.
If you don't get that reference, no one will. That's listening to this right now.
If you don't get that reference, contact Deej on Twitter and he'll tell you why you're wrong for not getting that reference. No,
so Gelman is like, so Regis and Kathy Lee, the morning show in the 90s, that was later rebranded to Regis and Kelly. And then it was like Kelly and Michael. And now it's just like, I think it's like the Daniel Tiger or something.
Daniel Tiger.
The puppet from Mr. Rogers and Kathy Lee. No, that's not a real thing, but that's why you should give me a job, NBC. No, so they had like a third person that was Gelman that they would like refer to in the audience. He was like the producer and he was trying to make things not suck. And they would just be like, well, Gelman was telling us this, because that's how Regis talks. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so that was what that reference was. He's our Gelman. Don't worry about it. I explained the reference. 2 people got it. You're welcome.
Neely was one of them, and Coco might have been the other.
Correct. They didn't have Regis in Japan. Regis in Japan? There's a movie that needed to happen.
Regis takes Tokyo.
Godzilla versus Regis.
Yeah. So yes, Frank, Endo needs to stop going offsides in NHL 21 and soon to be 22, which we'll talk about in a second, but we'll get to our last viewer question here before we do. Comes from Tyler. You get to play hockey in Europe. What team do you pick and why? Is it their jerseys, their name, the nice city, or do you just like that team? Deej, if you could play hockey overseas, who would you play for?
Overseas?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably CSK Moscow. It seems like it's like a one-way street to like
one-way
space
street
or
to
something.
Putin's front office.
Yeah. I don't know. You get in that oligarchy, you're set. Like, you got to deal with like some fucked up stuff, but like, you know, I
You're
feel like
safe.
at the end of the day, all those bad decisions you made go away to the sweet 12 cylinder engine of your Ferrari. It's like it's like drown out the voices.
Drown out the screams to the sound of your Ferrari engine. Ferrari. The oligarchy's choice. I don't know. I'd fucking pick like Stockholm, team in Stockholm. Let me live in Sweden or Finland for a while. That'd be fun. And cold.
Yeah.
So fun. I like cold. So it'd be fun. Deej, with that, I mentioned it as we kind of move on to our general section here. Everybody's lovely questions, by the way. NHL 22 was announced. Austin Matthews on the cover for the second time in 3 years.
It's weird to me that he took a year off.
I question his dedication.
Yeah, I took a year off. What was he dealing with? Personal issues? I bet he would have been on there last year if it wasn't for the incident.
Can we just refer to him mooning a cop or a security guard as the incident?
Yeah. Yeah.
It pissed a lot of people off. I couldn't care less about who's on a cover of a game when I don't buy physical copies of new games anymore. So I couldn't care less. Oh, no. You mean to tell me I'm going to have to see his face every time I load up the game? Oh,
honestly,
no.
That does upset me. So, seeing his face, it's just huge. We're going to have to look at that mustache for like a whole year.
Austin Matthews' huge face. So, in terms of the big additions that they've announced so far, again, presumably more is coming. They always have kind of feature breakdowns as we get closer to launch between the reveal trailer and the launch date, which is, I believe, October 7th. They announced that the Frostbite engine is in the game, following in the footsteps of both FIFA and Madden. Now, Deej, you weren't a big FIFA player, but you are a big Madden player.
Yeah.
For FIFA, I mean, it's a bit polarizing. There are some people who legitimately think that the game has gotten better. There are some people who also think, well, maybe had they used a different engine, the game at this point would be better than it is now. I feel like the Frostbite engine for FIFA has worked out relatively well. It's far from a perfect game. How do you feel the Frostbite engine has affected Madden? Well, really, in almost the past decade, just about.
I mean, it's certainly... I feel like the Frostbite engine handles collision significantly better, which will be good for hockey. I feel like collision is handled pretty well in Madden. That said...
when it works, because then you have people fumbling over one another sometimes.
I mean, the Frostbite engine at the end of the day lets them up their polygon count and their motion count, but it still doesn't change the fact that all their games are animation based.
I think that's the biggest complaint that a lot of people have, right? The Frostbite engine designed for first-person shooters, which often, rely heavily on animations as opposed to anything physics-based. So it is kind of that thought of, well, you want sports games to be a little bit more physics-based. I talked about, my thoughts on Frostbite quite a bit in the trailer breakdown video that I did on the main YouTube channel there. So check that out if you haven't. I'm also still answering questions in the comment section. The other big addition is Superstar X Factors, which we have also seen in Madden now for a couple of years, which the idea of these X Factors is to make top-notch special players that much more special and to help differentiate them from just your kind of average to good player. Now, Madden, the way it works is you have your like ultimate ability, which you essentially have to fire up. You know, you have to do something to get your player in the zone. And then you also have your minor abilities that are always there. In NHL, it's going to be similar with the X Factors where you have a zone ability, but you don't have to activate it. Like your zone ability is just this player is this good, which I think makes sense because hockey's less situational than football. So, and then on top of that, you are going to have like your other slight upgrades. They haven't announced what all the X Factors are going to be, so I can't share any of that yet. But, you know, just the idea of you could have, like, Alex Ovechkin presumably is going to have a boost to his one-timer. It makes sense. So you have the ability for that to be his zone factor to give him, like, this incredible boost, or it could be a minor X factor and give him, like, a slight boost, still above the average player. I like the idea. I mean, I also wondered maybe if NBA 2K's, like, badge system would have been the better way to go, but it's not surprising that EA took what was already a concept in a different EA game and added it to the NHL series. I mean, I understand people's concerns about maybe if it goes too far, something could be broken.
I mean, it will go too far. EA is the most predatory company on earth. They get these boomers to sign ridiculous exclusivity contracts that they don't understand so that they continue to prey on the youth by causing them to get addicted to gambling. So then, like, I don't know. I feel like X Factors is like, there's something like, I'm a fan of trading card games, right? Like, and I feel like Ultimate Teams are a form of trading card game, right?
Yeah, they are.
Like, I think that's like at their core. And so trading card games lately have pushed towards chase cards, right? Where it's like, oh, there's 3 like these super rare cards and you got to buy a whole bunch of packs. And so like originally the philosophy behind a lot of trading card games was to avoid chase cards because they feel lazy. And I feel like X Factors might, I really hope they do it correctly, like Madden, how you can upgrade regular dudes to be X Factors. But knowing NHL, they are going to make it chase cards. So I don't know.
I mean, in terms of the idea of them, though, like your thoughts on X Factors now in general, I'm intrigued.
I mean, if they do it right, it'll be awesome because it's cool in Madden. Like, obviously, Madden has the issue every year where a month in, they have to get rid of some X Factors because in testing, they didn't realize it would break the metagame. And so I definitely feel like going in for the first time, some things will be ridiculously powerful. And what it's going to do is like create uniformity amongst teams originally. And they can fix it. Well, like, I think it's a cool addition, but they have to handle it the way Madden handles it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. You know, the
like I like Madden X Factors, adjust. And I think it's very easy to break, is what I'll say.
My issue in terms of breaking is it just the really good top players who are going to be good anyway that are able to essentially exploit these, or are they outright broken? Because I feel like that's a lot of what happens, especially in NHL, is top players who are already good will be good enough to take advantage of something, and then people complain because they're not good enough to also take advantage of it. But then even if that gets removed, the top players are typically still the top players. So I don't know. Like, I'm going to be intrigued to see the balance. I'm going to be intrigued to see how it works in something like Ultimate Team in particular. I think they mentioned for the most part, I might not be wrong. I might not be right on this, so don't quote me, but pretty sure X Factors are like a universal thing. So it's like they're going to be in franchise mode, which I think will make franchise mode a lot more fun. If they're in, World of Chell, which I still hate that name. I always just call it ESHL. I think that'll make that particular mode a little bit more interesting as well. So I am intrigued. Yes, I guess at the start you'll have, especially for like ESHL and HUT, it'll be like, oh, get this player, he's broken. Or in ESHL it'll be, use this build, it's broken. But then not everyone will be good enough to pull off that build the way it needs to be worked. It's just like COD loadouts. Everyone's like, oh, what's the go-to COD loadout? Well, I use the loadout that this guy uses, but man, I'm not getting the same results. I think he lied. It's like, no, you're just not as good at the game as that guy, so that loadout doesn't work for you. You have to find what works for you. I am not someone who, for the most part, believes in meta builds. I think meta builds are a bit of a lie.
So I guess if I compare it with trading card games and X Factors and what you're talking about, is occasionally in trading card games, like all trading card games have a fundamental skill set, right? The ability to predict what's happening, the ability to count cards, work out percentages, and make value decisions. So I would say that the reactions and gameplay things that happen within NHL are a very different fundamental skill set. So I think the top players these things would only be bad for top players as if the X factors break the fundamental skill set that happens in playing Chell, is how I guess I would look at it.
So if it shortens the skill gap a little bit too much.
Or makes the fundamentals different.
That's fair. I mean, I guess that's my thing too. Like, if like X factors are in HUT, like is that going to be a negative or a positive? Will it change the fact that they're just like, here's a bunch of 99 overall cards, where it's like, well, that works in MLB, but it doesn't necessarily work in NHL because MLB is a little bit different and more situational. There's a lot of unanswered questions. I think, I think it was Nasher who put it out there that he sees it as this game could be fantastic or it could be NHL 15 like. NHL 15, when it moved, that was the first game on the Xbox One and the PS4. I feel like that game was more of a disaster because it was clearly rushed. There were a lot of missing features. I think the gameplay was actually decent. It's just there were no features. This, I don't know if it has the potential to be that bad. I don't think it'll be bad, but it could certainly be a disappointment because I think right now they're kind of on the cusp of here's a really good opportunity to turn the page and have this generation of hockey games be more of what they should, and to just in general, in my opinion, be better.
Yeah,
it's an interesting spot that they're in right now. So I understand the fact that the two announcements so far have been very polarizing, in that we just really don't know how this is going to go.
So here's how I look at it, and this is there's a phrase, right, called reinventing the light bulb. Like, you don't have to reinvent the light bulb. That I think about a lot. And what's interesting is they did reinvent the light bulb once, and they made it so it burns out every year, so you have to go buy a new one. That's
I see what you're saying. Buying what you're selling. Nico also asked this question. I don't know if I really have an answer. He asked, what EA, NHL, or Madden game had the best / most fair trade values, in your opinion, for a franchise mode? And Nico, I'll be honest with you, and this really comes after, I've been playing Madden franchise a lot since the game has come out. And it's still incredibly easy to just be like, oh, I want to get Kyle Pitts from Atlanta. I want to get Justin Jefferson from Minnesota. It's still way too easy to build a super team. I don't know if any sports game has gotten it right, at least between those two, in terms of having the AI GMs that you're up against appropriately value their players. I don't think any game's gotten it right yet. NHL 22, it might. I mean, they're going to have to change some things about trade values with X factors. Otherwise, my God, it's going to be a broken mess.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, just from a software engineer's perspective, for trade values, you basically have to give everything a quote-unquote monetary value for trading, and that will always be a breakable process.
Yes. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. That's why I'm rather sympathetic. I mean, again, I had the liberty of going to EA Vancouver in 2019. And I mean, people can ask, like, Tactics was there in the room. I remember, like, No Sleeves ended up walking in, I think Kenu from NHL Gamer too. Once Tack and I were already there talking to the people behind franchise mode for over an hour, and then we were still there for like another 2. I got a nice in-depth look at the process, and yes, something like that, an unrealistic thing such as having to say, all right, here's a meter that goes up to 100% value. Well, what's a second round pick worth? And then how does that differentiate based off the team and how well they're doing and where the pick's going to be? It is a very, very tough system to get right. Definitely. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I don't know if NHL or Madden has necessarily gotten it right. MLB definitely hasn't gotten it right either. I think for the most part, it's certain tweaks to. I mean, again, just having to try and come up with that value and have it replicate a real life situation where, for example, if in this fantasy situation, you're a team offering Boston, Martin Necas, Tim Stützle, and 2 firsts for David Pastrnak. In real life, you'd probably have to consider that. But in a video game sense, no. Why would we get rid of David Pastrnak? You can argue which one's more realistic, I suppose. So
yeah,
we'll continue to talk about NHL 22 as more news comes out. I mean, I'm excited for it, obviously, because it's, why I have any sort of a platform. And D, just someone who has bounced back and forth for good reason between, being a part of the NHL community and not.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's just you're skeptical about it. It's so for me, it's like anybody. For me, it's like I feel like anybody that sees me on release day, they're like, it's like, after all the times he's burned you, you're gonna take him back. I feel like that's how I feel about NHL, and I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm compelled to give a statement at the parole hearing about why NHL should stay in. I don't know. We'll see. Every year I'm hopeful. I love hockey. I love playing hockey video games, and I hope they put in the work. So we'll see.
We'll move on to our next topic there with that, and that is the unfortunate news that Henrik Lundqvist has announced his retirement after sitting out the last season following heart surgery. Apparently, he will be due to have another heart surgery at some point in the future. The New York Rangers have announced that they are planning to pretty much immediately retire his number in the upcoming season. We have talked about Henrik Lundqvist quite a bit on this show, and before we get into any other form of debate, I mean, there's pretty much no denying that he was, alongside other guys that we'll mention here soon, but he was one of the best goaltenders of his generation.
Yeah. He was, I think you could say in that generation of players, because I don't know, I kind of count Waugh and Brodeur as in the prior generation.
Yeah.
You could definitely say he was a top 3 goaltender, without a doubt.
Yeah. So, he finishes his career with 459 wins, which, again, it's we're going to have to get into this debate, but that amount of wins puts Lundqvist 6th all time in the NHL, behind Belfour, Luongo, Fleury, Waugh, and Brodeur, which Roberto Luongo joked on Twitter, let's start a podcast called Two Goats, No Cups. It brings, you cannot talk about Henrik Lundqvist essentially and how great of a career he had without, again, getting into that debate of Hockey Hall of Famer or not. And I think it's incredibly interesting because we have had this conversation before about how the voting typically goes for goaltenders when it comes to making the Hockey Hall of Fame. You look at the most recent goaltenders in the last 20 years to be inducted. 2020 class had Kim St. Pierre, who's one of the best goaltenders of all time, not just female goaltenders of all time. You then had Martin Brodeur in 2018, which was obvious, all the hardware. You had Rogi Vachon in 2016, 3-time Cup winner, if I'm not mistaken. Dominik Hasek in 2014 would have been interesting had he never gone to Detroit and won a Stanley Cup, but ultimately he did. So that certainly helped the argument. You could argue that he would have been there regardless, but 2 Stanley Cups made it undeniable. And then you get into Ed Belfour. Stanley Cups for one Ed Belfour, if I am not mistaken, of course. He happened to win it in 1999. So you look here at that trend, and there are other goalies, of course, Patrick Waugh, all the cups. Grant Fuhr in 2003, 5 cups. And that's it. Those are the only goalies in the last 20 years who have made the Hockey Hall of Fame. To my point, we go back to the all-time wins list, where Lundqvist is 6th. Brodeur, number 1, Hall of Fame. Waugh, number 2, Hall of Fame. Marc-Andre Fleury, number 3. He will be in the Hall of Fame. He has all the cups. Belfour was 5th, Hall of Fame. You have Luongo in 4th, Lundqvist in 6th. And based off of how the Hall of Fame votes, I still don't know. Like, and again, we've said this before in our opinions, and DH, correct me if I'm wrong, both Luongo and Lundqvist should be Hockey Hall of Fame goalies.
Yeah, I agree.
The big question, if Roberto Luongo, who will be up for induction before Lundqvist, obviously, if Luongo makes the Hockey Hall of Fame, Henrik Lundqvist will make the Hockey Hall of Fame. My opinion, at least. But there's still a question over whether or not either of these two make it. And you mentioned the best goalies of a generation. You talk about the top 4 of this generation. It's Fleury, Lundqvist, Price, Luongo. Fleury is the only one we can be certain about because he has a Stanley Cup. That's not saying that the other 3 goalies aren't fantastic and aren't worthy of being in the Hall of Fame, but how the Hall of Fame works and how strict they are, they do look for hardware. I don't know if Luongo or Hank make it like they should.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll find out. I think they will become more lax about letting goalies in just because there are so few in the Hall of Fame. So we'll see.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, keep an eye on whenever Roberto Luongo is up for induction, because like I said, if he makes it, I'd imagine Henrik Lundqvist would have to make it as well. And for Hank, again, just could sit here and praise Henrik Lundqvist pretty much all day. I mean, again, a 7th round pick in 2000, a career .918 save percentage. It's still absolutely absurd, of course, that he only won 1 Vezina in his career. Like, that's a travesty. But of course, he had some incredibly stiff competition. But I mean, he's someone who, you know, in this time, like you look back 2015-16, he got a decent amount of Hart votes. Same thing in 2012-13. And I mean, the Rangers came close, obviously, to a Stanley Cup. And had they won that, it would be absolutely undeniable to pretty much anybody. But it is just a shame to see his career end this way. Not exactly on his terms. You know, it ends. I mean, obviously, like his Rangers tenure as well, like it ends with the buyout, which I don't think anybody really thought would happen. It was a possibility, but it ends with a buyout. And then, oh, okay, he'll go to Washington. And then obviously the health concerns. It's just kind of, I mean, I guess no one, how many players get to end things at the top of the mountain, right? Like you talk about like Ray Bourque, Mark Recchi. There aren't too many guys that get to finish their career on an extreme high note, as sad as that is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's incredibly rare. And I think, I mean, that's why I feel like every time somebody finishes their career on a high note, it becomes an immortalized sports moment. It's just because it's incredibly rare.
Yeah. So Henrik Lundqvist, hell of a career, will hopefully end up being a Hockey Hall of Famer like he deserves. Like Deej said, hopefully they lighten up on the rules a little bit there. Other quick hits here as well. Speaking of jersey retirements, Chris Pronger getting his number retired by the Blues on January 17th. So an interesting way that I don't know, interesting career there as well. Hockey Hall of Famer already, if I'm not mistaken, there too. So good on the Blues for that. Travis Sanheim, it kind of continues our trend of talking about defensemen here. Travis Sanheim has re-signed with the Philadelphia Flyers. 2 years, $4.7 million cap hit. And I think that's fantastic. I mean, pretty much. Like I view it as right now they have basically everybody signed now. 4.7. Technically, according to Cap Friendly, their projected cap space before the Sanheim deal is added is at $4 million, just about even. So it looks like they might be a little bit over, unless there's, again, some different cap maneuverability or someone ends up on IR. But the roster has 14 forwards, 6 defensemen, 2 goalies factored in. So it looks like there could be a tiny bit of overage there, but this will pretty much be the last move that the Flyers make. And, I mean, it gives them now a defense of Sanheim, Provorov, Ellis, Ristolainen, and then probably Braun and Yandel. God help the Flyers if they don't make the playoffs this year, because it was a disaster enough to not make it last year, and you could argue this team is better than they were.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
yeah,
go ahead.
I don't know. No, yeah, I think they are. They just needed to be better than they were. So
I think too, it's kind of hit that tipping point where it's like, okay, let's see some playoff success for that core again. It's been a little bit. So speaking of playoff success, and well, a team that's not likely to have any, Calgary signed Nikita Zadorov to a 1-year deal worth $3.75 million. Yeah, the loss of Mark Giordano, and now this defense is Hanifin, Anderson, Tanev, Zadorov, probably Valimaki and Shieldington. They still apparently don't have a backup goalie listed on roster on Cap Friendly. So I'd be a little bit afraid if I was a Flames fan over what could come next, because they still haven't blown up that core.
yeah, I mean, you got to imagine a sizable defenseman like Zadorov does well in a Daryl Suter coach system. So,
and if he doesn't, then what does that say?
It says that he's going to the KHL.
He's coming home. It's coming home. Unfortunately, it's Nikita Zadorov, so have fun with that. There was a really weird buyout as well that I wanted to bring up, as Detroit bought out the last year of Franz Nielsen's deal, and I don't know why. He had 1 year left at $5.25 million, but for Detroit, they don't have to sign anybody outside of Philip Hronek, and he wasn't going to be looking at a $12 million contract. So with that buyout, they have $19 million on the books. It's again, it was a $5.25 million cap hit. It's now a $4.25 and then $500K next year. So I don't really understand the move, but I mean, I guess aside from getting a veteran off roster that you don't really want taking up a spot, maybe trust the Yzer plan. And Frank had also mentioned, does Yzerman fire Blashill if he has a bad season? I don't think Jeff Blashill's the long-term coach for Detroit anyway. But Steve Yzerman's had a very, very interesting offseason between some of the trades that he's made, some of the signings, the moving up in the draft to get Sebastian Cossa. It's just been a really interesting time for Steve Yzerman. He's making moves left and right.
Yeah. It's one of those things where just every time Steve Yzerman makes a move, I always wonder, like, the player that he acquired, it's always like, oh, I guess he's way better than I thought he was. Like, even if he acquires a really good player, it's always like, oh, he's that good, huh?
Right. Yeah, he kind of
has the Yzer plan. It's the air of mystery.
He had that reputation in Tampa, too, where it's like, oh, shit, this guy must be really, really good. So,
yeah.
To Wings fans, I'd say trust him. But yeah, in terms of like Jeff Blashill being the coach, I doubt he's the long-term solution there. I mean, I think everyone can kind of see like, hey, I don't know, maybe he's good enough for the room. Who's to say? Other random tidbits. Owen Power, along with Seattle's Matty Beniers and Columbus's Kent Johnson, are all returning to the University of Michigan. So it's not just a Buffalo's terrible thing. I mean, you have the 3 of the top 5 picks in the draft all committing to going back to the NCAA, which honestly, I mean, this could probably be, I mean, maybe not a record low. I'm sure the record's 0, but this could be a really low amount of rookies that we see immediately jump to the NHL because of the circumstances of last year and a lot of these guys missing out on playing time.
Yeah. You got to wonder, you're a member of the University of Michigan hockey team. How stacked does your locker room need to be before you realize you're the bad guys?
I'd say embrace it.
You're the Hawks. The Ducks are coming for you.
It's going to be a hell of a team. So, honestly, some people are viewing that as bad news for Buffalo. I don't. I feel like that's a decent bit of news, to be honest. But in somewhat bad news for Buffalo, it was announced that play-by-play man Rick Janneret, this will be his final season after 51 years. One of the most, I'd say, prolific, but I'm going to go with eccentric play-by-play commentators in the history of pro sports. Like, you cannot confuse Rick Janneret with anybody else. And I think that that's one of the biggest compliments you can possibly pay a commentator.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, 51 years. Do you blame the guy? That's a long time to serve. So,
and how many of those years were of Buffalo Sabres hockey?
Yeah.
That man is a gem. Goodness. I think actually, what was it? He started he started with the team on radio in 71, 72.
That's nuts.
That is a level of dedication that cannot be overlooked or underappreciated. That is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, he's the Vin Scully of the Sabres.
Yeah.
And again, in terms of a compliment, being compared to someone like Vin Scully, like that's absolutely ridiculous. So I'll try to catch a few more Sabres games this year, although God bless him, he's going to have to commentate for that team for one more season. And in terms of another quick talking point here before we finally get to our last decent point of discussion, Zdeno Chara's next move is pondered. Andy Strickland, who covers the Blues, said that the Blues are not an option for Chara. His focus, if he plays, will be to stay in the East to remain close to family. So that raises the question of who would Zdeno Chara play for if he's going to stay in the East. Now, obviously, he played for a Metro Division team last year in Washington. You could go through the list of teams that could use him. I would still, just please, for the love of God, come back to Boston. I think one season of the likes of Zaboral, Clifton, and other guys to see who could really be a solid everyday defenseman. I think you got to see that last season. I want Chara to come back to Boston so fucking badly. Yes, they likely need another center. Probably. I mean, we'll see if Charlie Coyle can be the second guy. But they're on 45 of 50 contracts with $1 million projected in cap space. They have the room to bring in Zdeno Chara. Please bring him back, because there has been the conversation of maybe Buffalo and what he could bring to a young Buffalo team to try and maybe instill a culture change there. What he could bring, I think, to that Detroit Red Wings locker room. You could argue they already have someone like Mark Stahl there, but there's a pretty big difference between Zdeno Chara and Mark Stahl. Montreal has been talked about. Ottawa has been talked about. I feel like Toronto's been lightly mentioned. Like, there's no shortage of teams where I think Zdeno Chara on your third pairing could still be beneficial, but I would be... Honestly, like, him leaving, I understood it. You got to see what you have with the young guys eventually. But you've now seen what you have with the young guys, and Chara not being back to Boston, being brought back to Boston to play third pair minutes, I think would be a mistake. And maybe I'm thinking with my heart a bit too much, but I would be incredibly disappointed if he ends up anywhere else. And I feel like I'm likely to end up being incredibly disappointed.
Yeah, no, it's weird. Chara is a very specific fit, and I mean, obviously fit. Boston works, but you need a young team that has a spot for a third pairing defenseman that also needs leadership, but also has a shot at a cup. Because I don't think it's an awkward fit, and no teams immediately come to mind.
I mean, again, I think there's a lot of different teams, but like you said, it depends, right? Is he looking for a cup at this point, or is he content with the one that he has and is now maybe shifting to, I can switch into a role where, I mean, honestly, like the thought of Zdeno Chara signing on with Ottawa and then being a front office guy for them, I think could happen. I don't know if he necessarily wants to go to a Canadian team, but again, Boston, sign him, transition him to a front office role if it's what he wants. Please, God damn it. Speaking of God damn it. Our last talking point today. The Arizona Coyotes. I saved this for last intentionally because I desperately want your thoughts on this. After this upcoming season, the Coyotes have officially been booted from good old Gila River Arena. Again, this was Katie Strang reporting from The Athletic. Full article is worth the read. It's behind the paywall. But again, subscribe to The Athletic. She has done a tremendous job covering the Oats. It was her story talking about Bill Armstrong and some of the culture changes for the worse going on there. Each side with the lease had a year-by-year agreement where either side could opt out, and essentially the city, the team, has been booted out by the arena. There are two interesting points. I will not cover everything in the article, but there are two. There's one point here from the article itself, and then the Coyotes released a statement. So, Deej, I'll talk about the article first and your thoughts. Now, you could consider it slightly out of context, maybe. According to a July 29th letter sent on behalf of Phelps to Chuck Steedman, Executive President of Strategy and Development for ASM Global, who has to do with the arena, and Dale Adams, who is the GM of the arena, titled RE Coyotes Past Due. Phelps informed the two that the Coyotes owe almost $1.5 million to the arena as of July 17th. In the letter obtained via public records request filed earlier this month, Phelps said that more than $300,000 of that amount is over 4 months delinquent, and that the letter was communicated previous. The letter also communicated previous late payments and forgiven debts. From the prior season. The Coyotes apparently owe this arena, their arena, almost $1.5 million. My reaction to that is immediately questioning the owner of this team. Because we have seen something like this in the NHL before, the New York Islanders very well know, where, oh yeah, we'll pay you later, don't worry about it. We'll pay you later, don't worry about it. And I feel like a lot of people know how that story ends. Feel free to look up I think it was the 30 for 30 on John Spano, for those who don't know that story. So Alex Marullo, as the owner of the Coyotes, who has owned this team now for 2 seasons, 2 years, as of August 29th. I question him as an owner now. How have you allowed a $1.5 million debt to add up to the point where your arena that you're with says, we're out? How do you allow that to happen before you have an arena set elsewhere? Deej, your reaction to that first part of this story?
To me, it says, well, we have a casino owner that can't pay his debts. Casinos inherently, because of the way games of chance work in mass amounts, you should be able to have predictable profits. If a casino does not have predictable profits and is losing money and failing to pay their debts, it's because something incredibly shady and or illegal is going on.
Yeah, I mean, that was my initial thought as well. And I mean, this guy owns like multiple radio stations. He owns 2 hotels, one in Reno and one in Vegas. So yeah, there should be no shortage of funds to easily pay this away. Net worth research isn't the easiest thing to find, but it is known that he's a billionaire. You're going to get kicked out of this arena for $1.5 million. So why, and where is this struggle for money coming from?
Okay, let's put that in perspective, right? So if you're a billionaire, $1 million is 1,000th of your net worth. Let's say you only have $1,000.
Yeah.
Let's say you are already at the movie theater. You have the best seat in the movies. Something happens. There was a discrepancy. You have to pay $1 to keep that seat. And you don't.
The Coyotes released a statement responding. Said, we are disappointed by today's unilateral decision by the city of Glendale to break off negotiations on a multi-year lease extension agreement. We are hopeful that they'll reconsider a move, although the arena has said absolutely not. We're hopeful they'll reconsider a move that would primarily damage the small businesses and hardworking citizens of Glendale. I will stop there. Deej, the Coyotes, immediately in the statement saying, we are hopeful that they will reconsider a move that would primarily damage small business and hardworking citizens. Scumbags.
Oh, what a bunch of manipulative assholes.
There's no other way to react to that. Just scumbags. $1.5 million due to an arena. You pay that, and oh boy, those small businesses and hardworking citizens aren't affected. I like how they try to flip the narrative incredibly poorly at, well, it's the arena that made this decision. I'll continue on. We remain open to restarting good faith negotiations with the city. Most importantly, the Coyotes are 100% committed to finding a long-term area solution here in Arizona, and nothing will shake our determination to do what is right for our organization, the residents of the entire valley, and most importantly, our fans.
Yeah.
I mentioned the Carolina Hurricanes going from, they were somewhat polarizing, but for the most part, it's like, yeah, the bunch of jerks thing, how they rallied that fan base. For the most part, they were a likable team. And I mentioned that, hey, I thought based off of some of their moves this offseason, getting rid of Alex Nedeljkovic, bringing in D'Angelo, that they became somewhat dislikable. The Arizona Coyotes, I mean, they have some incredibly dedicated fans. We had Deke Slayer on the show very early on in this show's life cycle. And as a diehard Yotes fan, you know, he mentioned a lot. I do recommend people go back and listen to that show. But the point is, when that team is good, feel free to look back at like the playoffs, and they made it to the conference final. When that team is good, there are fans that show up. It's the same thing as the Florida Panthers. No one wants to root for a team that's just going to get shit kicked every single year. That's a fact. Correct. It doesn't matter what sport it is. Feel free to look at, who's the worst team in baseball right now? Let me look at the standings.
Is it the Orioles?
I will challenge you. So Baltimore might still fill a stadium. Baltimore has 38 wins. It is indeed Baltimore. Tell me how full a stadium is for the Orioles right now. Tell me how full a stadium is for the Arizona Diamondbacks right now compared to when the Diamondbacks won a World Series. Pittsburgh, look at the last time the Pirates made the playoffs compared to what their attendance probably looks like right now, aside from the fact that, hey, people want to get outside after what this has been in terms of our living situations. The Arizona Coyotes are like, how do you root? Like, I get that you could say the same thing. Like, how do Bruins fans root for, the Jacobs, owned team when Jeremy Jacobs has some questionable shit, to say the least? But I feel so goddamn bad for this fan base. It's just one hit after another. And on top of that, again, we all kind of know that the reason why this guy bought the team, and it was kind of covered in that other Katie Strang article, is it helps him legitimize owning casinos now in the state of Arizona. Because if you say, oh, well, it's a part of a package deal with the Coyotes in our arena, okay, you're good to go. You can have casinos in Arizona too. So I don't think, like, first and foremost, the idea of them moving out of state, no. This does not mean the Arizona Coyotes are moving to Quebec City, are moving to Houston, are moving to Milwaukee. Nor do I think that should be the case. It is incredibly valuable to have, and again, well, the NHL does everything to keep them there. That's for a reason. It is incredibly valuable to have a team in the state of Arizona for a lot of different reasons, on top of the fact that, hey, guess what? There are actually fans there. How many teams, how many fan bases would survive going through what that team has gone through? They're not moving. Short term, they'll end up in like the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, or they'll work out a deal with one of the local colleges and maybe even play in a smaller arena. Maybe they move to Oklahoma City and then move back after a season or two. Long-term solution is that they end up in Tempe. Like, they're going to end up in Tempe, Arizona. That's almost a certainty at this stage, unless they work out something in downtown Phoenix, which is unlikely. Overall, they're not going to move. They're going to stay in the state. But the fact that, again, you allowed yourself, you didn't get booted, you allowed yourself to get booted from your arena before you could have an arena ready to go in Tempe is unbelievable. Like, it's, I cannot believe this ownership group. Something seems incredibly fishy, and I feel incredibly sorry for Coyotes fans. This is just, it's awful.
Yeah. What's interesting too, right, is there is another NHL tie-in here with the Atlanta Thrashers, in that Atlanta Spirit was the name of the team owners of the Hawks and the Thrashers, right? That was the name of the company. And in 2011, they decided to liquidate. So they sold the Thrashers to True North. And then also in 2011, Alex Marullo put in a bid for the Hawks. And they didn't. Something happened in their investigation where they declined to sell it to him and to look for other buyers, which is interesting to me. And then in 2015, they ended up finding a buyer for the Atlanta Hawks. I think that was, what was his name? Tony Ressler was the name of the guy. So I don't know. It's interesting, right?
The same thing happened with John Spano and the Dallas Stars. He tried to buy the Dallas Stars, and they saw enough that they backed out. And I believe he tried to do the same thing with the Florida Panthers, and then Spano made the play for the Islanders and technically owned that team for a little bit before it all crumbled.
Yeah.
There is something incredibly fishy about this guy. And God help the NHL and their reputation if this happened again and they did let essentially a freaking swindler make his way into an ownership situation again.
I mean, I think the best way that I can end my thoughts on this situation, no, I do not think they will be gone from Arizona. I think they'll relocate to Tempe, at least for 1 year, and then I think they'll figure it out. The NHL is just hell-bent on, come hell or high water, keeping the Coyotes in place.
And I think, to cut you off, I think the reason for that is long-term, you probably want a team in Arizona and then also have a team in Houston. Maximize the region's potential.
Maybe we'll get the Arizona Hornets. But so the last statement I'll make is, so in 2011, Marullo tries to buy the Hawks. The owners turn him down. In 2013, he put in a bid to buy the Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino. And they turned him down after doing some research.
I think that says it all.
Yeah.
So, again, long term, the Coyotes, they're not going to leave Arizona. And honestly, I do hope that at some point, please, for the love of God, can this franchise get put into a situation where they are allowed, like, not only that, just think about this. You talk about something's up money-wise. I mean, you look at what the Coyotes have done this offseason, though, too. We're not going to try to be competitive, but we'll take on a lot of contracts. I don't understand what's going on, but I really do just hope that at some point we get a chance to actually maybe see this team have some level of sustained success. Because, again, I think you talk about the fans there that are there, and I don't think anyone will have the questions anymore of like, oh, well, are there even fans in Arizona? Like, that's not a reasonable question. It's just, how can you expect the location issues? How can you expect the ownership issues? How can you expect any fan base to overcome all of that? Yeah. Nobody would. Look at it's more similar, I guess, to the Ottawa Senators than you'd hope. Shitty owner, shitty location for the arena. That team's not good. Is that arena full? Fuck no. But they're in Canada, so it's fine. And LOL Senators. But how many people do you hear calling to move the Senators? But the Coyotes, because they're in an untraditional hockey market, move them to Quebec. Like, it's nonsense to me. So, much like, continuing to cover other topics like NHL 22, which we talked about in the show, we'll continue to cover this. I mean, again, the Coyotes have the entirety of this season still to play in that arena. It is the 22-23 season where they will be playing somewhere else, and we don't currently know. And you're not going to be building a multi-million-dollar stadium in that time. Like, they will not have an arena built. Not a chance.
Well, I mean, even just the logistics of building the arena in Tempe, like I don't know if you saw this, but the it used to be a solid waste compost yard.
Yeah,
so,
I heard that.
So this is interesting for a couple of reasons, and this is something that if you didn't grow up in Florida, you probably are not aware of. So Florida, obviously, a lot of golf courses. Mm-hmm. Golf courses need to be grown and fertilized a very certain way to keep the grasses intact. To prevent weeds from building up. And it's very similar to what would happen in a waste compost yard, much like this. So when a golf course is abandoned in Florida, that real estate sits for years and years and years because you need to physically excavate all of that dirt because it's essentially explosive because of the level of fertilizer it is. And so they are having the same issue where the environment basically needs to be, I don't like that I'm using this word because it's not 100% correct, but it essentially needs to be terraformed before you can build anything on top of it, which is its own crazy thing where you need to get rid of all of the soil because it's a horrific fire hazard that is extremely volatile and you can't put a solid foundation on it. So, I mean, it's just another barrier to putting an arena in Tempe. So it's nuts. It gets even crazier, you know?
I thought as we were talking about this, maybe we should have had Deke on the show again to talk about this, but I don't like.
We don't need that sad of a man on.
I don't exactly. I don't like bringing my friends onto the show.
Come be sad for the public. Let us parade your sadness.
We should have brought someone like Coco on the show once Tampa won the cup, but yeah, it just keeps ending up being in these situations where it's like. Oftentimes the talking points to where you'd want to hear from someone like a Deke Slayer right now in this situation is because the team is just.
I know. You don't want to be like, yeah. It's like wave to the people, blow them kisses. You know?
Let's see those tears. Cry for the camera. Look right into the lens and cry for the camera.
This was the largest hockey team I could afford. Does that mean I should be made the subject of fun? I don't know.
Let's end this show on a hypothetical question. And again, all speculative assumptions, alleged allegations. We can't say for sure if one Mr. Marullo is broke or not. He might be. Maybe. Possibly.
He's definitely not. Well, his money comes from weird places. He's definitely not broke.
Question for you to end this show. Is he still the owner of the team 3 years from now?
That's a really good question.
That is a really good question.
I don't know if he's the owner or not, but I would be willing to put money on 2024-2025 NHL season. The franchise currently known as the Coyotes is in Houston.
I'm intrigued to see what happens. I'm scared.
There's the arena there. It's too quick. It's too easy of a sale. It's one document. You sign the numbers and they're gone. There's nothing the NHL can do to prevent it because it just doesn't work like that anymore.
Is Toyota Center fit for ice hockey though?
I mean, does it matter?
Probably not. I mean, they could probably make it work.
I mean, they have stick and puck at the Toyota Center already. No, I think that's a different Toyota arena. But yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It is pretty much all I can say at this point. Just there are just so many questions, unfortunately, about the Coyotes. It never stops.
You know who used to play at the Toyota Center is the Arrows.
Houston Arrows? Oh, God. So,
Yeah,
there you go. All right. In 3 years' time, will we see the Houston... Well, I mean, I guess that would be the answer to our most recent relocation and rebranding. That'll be the new answer to both. It'll be moving to Houston, where they'll become the Houston Hodgepodgers, the Houston Hot Potatoes,
the Houston Problems. Houston, we have the problems. So
this show was brought to you by our friends at Manscaped.
I dare. That is Seattle Sea Cattle level. I'm so proud of myself. That is up there.
I'm going to have to make that a team name now.
This has been the Saturday evening show of the Tougies Take Podcast. Tougies Take Podcast, home to happy listeners in 49 states and Canada. Thanks for listening. This has been a Deej Audio podcast. Deej Audio, you're listening to it. Coming up next, we've got the free jazz hour, followed by $1 worth of Nickelback. That's right, 20 of Nickelback's greatest hits in a row. We'll see you next week.